The rain was coming down in sheets as I drove home, the wipers of my old Ford struggling to keep up. I am Barnaby, a mechanic in my late 40s living in Birmingham, Alabama, and usually, I find the rhythmic drumming of the rain on the roof of my car soothing. Tonight, though, it felt like another layer of gloom on top of an already heavy heart. For weeks, my wife, Rowena, had been distant. We'd been together for 20 years, married for 18, and I thought I knew her inside and out. But lately, she'd become a stranger. The easy laughter that used to fill our kitchen had been replaced by strained silences. The gentle touches, the small gestures of affection had vanished. I tried talking to her, of course. "Is everything okay, Rowena?" I'd ask, reaching for her hand across the dinner table. She'd pull away, her eyes darting around the room as if she was looking for an escape. "I am fine, Barnaby," she'd say, her voice tight. "Just tired, tired." That was her constant refrain. Too tired to cook, too tired to talk, too tired to, well, you get the picture. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But my gut was screaming at me that something was terribly wrong. The late nights at work, the hushed phone calls she took in the hallway, the way she flinched when I touched her, it all added up to a knot of anxiety that tightened in my chest with each passing day. I pulled into the driveway of our small, two-story house. The house we'd bought together, the house where we'd raised our two kids, now grown and flown. The house that was supposed to be our sanctuary, our haven. Now it felt like a cage. I killed the engine and sat for a moment, staring at the front door. I didn't want to go inside. I didn't want to face the coldness that had taken root in our home, but I had no choice. This was my life, my marriage, and I wasn't ready to give up on it without a fight. I took a deep breath, opened the car door, and stepped out into the downpour. The rain soaked through my clothes in seconds, chilling me to the bone. It felt like a fitting metaphor for the state of my marriage. I unlocked the front door and stepped inside, shaking the water from my hair. "Rowena?" I called out, my voice echoing in the empty hallway. No answer. I walked into the living room. The TV was on, but the room was empty. A half-empty glass of wine sat on the coffee table. Rowena's favorite blanket was draped over the back of the couch, but she was nowhere to be seen. "Rowena." I called again, my voice laced with a growing sense of unease. "Upstairs," she finally replied, her voice muffled. I climbed the stairs slowly, my heart pounding in my chest. I reached the landing and walked towards our bedroom. The door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open, and everything shattered. Rowena was in our bed, not alone. With a man I vaguely recognized as a neighbor, a guy named Quint who helped her with gardening sometimes. They were very busy, and very naked. The scene unfolded in slow motion, like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Rowena's eyes widened in horror as she saw me. Quentin scrambled to cover himself, his face a mask of shame and panic. I stood there, frozen, unable to process what I was seeing. My mind went blank. My body went numb. It was like the world had stopped spinning. Then the pain hit, a searing, white-hot agony that ripped through my chest, stealing my breath and leaving me gasping for air. I stumbled backward, away from the bed, away from the image that would forever be burned into my memory. I turned and ran, blindly, desperately, down the stairs and out of the house. I didn't stop running until I reached my garage. I slammed the door shut behind me and leaned against it, my chest heaving, my body trembling. The rain continued to fall, pounding on the roof of the garage like a relentless drumbeat. I slid down the door and sat on the cold concrete floor, my head in my hands. I couldn't think. I couldn't feel. I could only breathe. How could she do this to me? How could she betray me like this? After all these years, after all the love, after all the sacrifices, how could she throw it all away for a cheap, meaningless fling? I stayed there for hours, lost in a haze of shock and disbelief. The rain eventually stopped, and the first rays of dawn began to peek through the cracks in the garage door. But inside me, the darkness remained. Finally, I stood up, my body stiff and sore. I walked over to my workbench and picked up a wrench. It felt heavy in my hand, solid and real in a world that had suddenly become surreal. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew I couldn't stay here. I couldn't stay in this house, in this life, with this woman who had shattered my world. I walked back into the house. Rowena was sitting at the kitchen table, her head in her hands. She looked up as I entered, her eyes red and swollen. "Barnaby," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "I can explain, explain." I said, my voice flat. Explain what, Rowena? Explain how you could sleep with another man in our bed. Explain how you could destroy everything we've built together. She started to cry, great, heaving sobs that shook her entire body. "I'm so sorry, Barnaby," she said, her words choked with tears. "I don't know what came over me. It was a mistake. A terrible, awful mistake, a mistake." I repeated, my voice rising. "You call that a mistake? A mistake is forgetting to take out the trash. A mistake is putting too much salt in the soup. What you did, Rowena, was a betrayal. A deliberate, calculated betrayal. I know," she said, her voice pleading. "Please, Barnaby, give me another chance. I promise it will never happen again. I'll do anything to make it up to you." I looked at her, really looked at her, and I saw a woman I no longer recognized. A woman who had lied to me, deceived me, and broken my heart. A woman who was willing to say anything to save herself. And in that moment I knew I was done. "It's too late, Rowena," I said, my voice cold and hard. "I can't forgive you. I can't forget what I saw. It's over." Her face crumpled and she started to wail, a sound that grated on my nerves like nails on a chalkboard. "Please, Barnaby," she begged. "Don't do this. We can work through this. We can go to counseling. We can fix this." "There's nothing to fix, Rowena," I said. "You broke it. And I'm not going to waste my time trying to put it back together." I turned and walked away, leaving her sobbing at the kitchen table. I went upstairs and started packing my things. I didn't take much, just a few clothes, some personal items, and my tools. Everything else could stay. I didn't want it. As I was packing, I found a small velvet box hidden in the back of my closet. I opened it. Inside was a diamond ring. A ring I had bought for Rowena for our 20th anniversary. An anniversary that would never come. I stared at the ring for a moment, my heart aching with a pain I thought I could no longer feel. Then I closed the box and tossed it into the trash. I finished packing and carried my bags downstairs. Rowena was still sitting at the kitchen table, her face buried in her hands. I walked past her without a word and opened the front door. "Where are you going?" she asked, her voice muffled. "Away from you," I said, my voice flat. "Away from this house. Away from this life." I stepped out into the morning sun and walked towards my truck. I didn't look back. I drove away from Birmingham, away from my old life, with nothing but my tools, my clothes, and a broken heart. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I had to start over. I had to find a way to heal, to rebuild, to find happiness again. It wouldn't be easy, but I was determined to do it. I owed it to myself. I ended up in Asheville, North Carolina, a small town nestled in the Blue Ridge Mountains. I rented a small cabin on the outskirts of town and set up a small mechanic shop in the garage. I worked hard, fixing cars, making friends, and slowly, painstakingly, putting my life back together. I didn't hear from Rowena for months. Then one day I received a letter. It was postmarked Birmingham. I hesitated before opening it. I didn't want to dredge up the pain, the anger, the bitterness that I had worked so hard to overcome. But curiosity got the better of me. I opened the letter and began to read. It was from Rowena. She was begging me to come back. She said she had made a mistake, a terrible mistake, and she couldn't live without me. She said she had broken things off with Quentin and was willing to do anything to win me back. I read the letter with a growing sense of detachment. It was like reading about someone else's life, someone else's pain. I no longer felt the rage, the heartbreak, the despair that had consumed me for so long. I felt nothing. I finished the letter and tossed it into the fireplace. I watched as the flames consumed the paper, turning Rowena's words into ashes. Then I went back to work, fixing a broken-down engine. It was a simple task, a concrete task, a task that required all my focus and attention. And as I worked, I realized that I was finally free, free from the pain, free from the anger, free from the woman who had betrayed me. I had survived. I had rebuilt. I had found happiness again. And that was all that mattered. But the story doesn't end there. About a year after that letter, I received a call from a lawyer in Birmingham. Rowena had passed away. Apparently, she had been diagnosed with cancer shortly after I left. She had kept it a secret, not wanting to burden me. Quint, the neighbor, had left her shortly after I moved out, and she was all alone. The cancer spread quickly, and she succumbed to the disease within a few months. The lawyer informed me that Rowena had left everything to me in her will. Our house, her savings, everything. I was stunned. I didn't know what to do. I certainly didn't need the money. I was doing fine on my own. After much deliberation, I decided to sell the house and donate the money to a cancer research foundation. It felt like the right thing to do, a way to honor Rowena's memory, even though she had hurt me so deeply. I never remarried. I never even dated seriously. The experience with Rowena had left me scarred, wary of commitment, but I wasn't unhappy. I had my work, my friends, and my peace of mind. I had learned to be content with my own company. I had learned to forgive, even if I couldn't forget, and that I realized was the greatest revenge of all. To move on, to heal, to find happiness in spite of the pain. To not let the betrayal define me, but to use it as a catalyst for growth and self-discovery. That's my story. A story of betrayal, heartbreak, and ultimately redemption. A story that I hope will resonate with anyone who has ever been hurt, betrayed, or abandoned. Remember, you are stronger than you think. You are more resilient than you believe, and you are capable of finding happiness again, even after the darkest of times. Just don't let anyone steal your light.